Hi, welcome to this question. I recommend you give it a try before we get into this. Okay, let's have a look. Which of the following is an assumption underlying the reasoning in the passage above? Okay, so there is some passage, some reasoning. We have to find out what an assumption is in this reasoning or argument. Okay, so first of all, what is an assumption? Assumption is something that has to be true for the argument to hold. Okay, if we negate that assumption, if that assumption is not true, then the argument doesn't hold. So that's basically the theory. Okay, let's look at what argument we have here. Studies of fatal automobile accidents reveal that. Okay, so there's fatal accidents. Let's say 100 accidents they studied. Fatal as in someone died in that accident. Okay, in those 100 accidents, in the majority of cases, in most of the cases, right, in which one occupant of an automobile is killed while other survives. Okay, so one is killed, the other survives. In such 100 cases, let's say it is the passenger, not the driver, who is killed. Okay, so basically they are saying passengers die more often than drivers in such fatal accidents. Okay, it is ironic that, okay, ironic basically means now they are going to show something because of which this figure or rather this statistic should not occur. Something opposite of that, something that they didn't expect. Okay, it is ironic that the innocent passenger, okay, they are saying the passenger is innocent, is an innocent passenger should suffer for the driver's carelessness, while the driver often suffers only minor injuries or none at all. Okay, so they are saying it is sad that innocent people are dying, so this person is innocent, okay, passenger, and the driver is careless. Okay, the careless person is not dying, but the innocent person is dying. That's what it is saying. Okay, that's the whole essence of the argument. We have to find out an assumption, something that has to be true. Okay, it's going to be difficult for us to sort of guess this question, so let's move on to the answer choices directly. In most fatal automobile accidents, okay, so they are talking about the same set, which is a good thing. Many times they talk about a different set, so maybe I mean, I don't know, but maybe there is an answer choice that talks about accidents that are not fatal. Okay, but here they are talking about the same set. In most fatal automobile accidents, the driver of a car in which an occupant is killed is at fault. In which an occupant is killed would be the passenger, right? So in most fatal accidents wherein the passenger is killed, the driver is guilty. Is that an assumption? Yes, it may be an assumption because they are talking about driver as a careless person. Okay, a better way to check, however, is to negate this answer choice, right? The assumption negation test is what I'm talking about. Negate the answer choice and see if the argument would still hold up. So let's negate. What do you mean by negate? We will talk about create a sentence that is exactly the opposite of this. Basically, we negate the verb part. Okay, technically looking at it, the verb part, the verb here is, so we are going to say is not. So in such accidents, the driver is not at fault. Okay, that would become the negation of this answer choice. If the driver is not at fault, can we say this statement, driver's carelessness, it is ironic that the careless driver doesn't suffer any injury, right? Then it would not make sense. The argument would not make sense because the argument is blaming the driver, and here this statement would mean that the driver is not at fault. Okay, so in that case the argument will not make sense. So negation of answer choice A sort of breaks down the argument, so it's a good contender for assumption. Let's keep this on hold. Okay, always rely on assumption negation test because it's a foolproof test, firstly, and second thing, it sort of allows you to double check, cross verify, right? Sometimes things are very subtle and you think that this is an assumption but it's actually not, right? So always rely on that. You may not want to do it every time, but it's a fairly good indicator of an assumption. Okay, let's move on. Drivers of automobiles are rarely killed in auto accidents. Okay, yes, this is consistent with the paragraph. Okay, rarely killed. Okay, but again, I am not very sure about this term rarely. Okay, what do you mean by rarely? How many % of time? Here they are saying majority of cases passengers are dying. So it could be 51 cases passengers are dying, 49 cases drivers are dying, right? It could still be a high number. Does it have to be a very rare thing for the drivers to die? No, they could still be dying almost as sort of, as much as the passengers are dying, right? Or it could also be like 99 greater than 1. Okay, so this rarely thing indicates only this kind of a very extreme scenario, whereas that kind of a scenario is not expected or not referred to in the passage. Passage only talks about majority. So this is an extreme assumption. This is not true. Let's negate it. Let's say let's do negation of this. Drivers are not rarely killed. Drivers are also equally or maybe more often killed. Okay, that would be the negation. Now that more often scenario is not consistent with this, because here they are talking about passengers are dying more than drivers. Okay, but equally killed scenario, would that have to be true for the conclusion to hold? It doesn't have to be true, right? So this is not a very extreme scenario, right? The negation of this also. So this is not an assumption. We anyway have a better answer choice. Okay, let's move on. Most deaths in fatal automobile accidents are suffered by occupants of the cars rather than by pedestrians. Okay, that means out of these 100 passengers died, or 51 passengers died, 49 drivers died, whatever. Okay, that number is still more than the pedestrians that were killed in that accident. Okay, are we even considering pedestrians? Does that have to be true for the conclusion to hold? No, it doesn't have to be true, because it doesn't add any sort of confirmation or negation to the conclusion, right? The assumption has to be an implicit assumption, in the sense that it has to be something that is necessary for the argument to hold. Pedestrian comparison is not necessary for the argument to hold, so this doesn't go. Let's rule it out. Let's look at D. Auto safety experts should do something. Okay, this is pure statistics, right? What an expert should believe or not believe. Okay, should that be true? I mean, this is an expectation from an entity, right? Auto safety experts. Okay, auto safety experts should do something. Let's not even read this, right? Auto safety experts should do something. Does that have to be true for the argument to hold? The argument is completely statistical, right? So it doesn't have to be. So that's one way to look at this. But let's still move on. Auto safety experts should increase their efforts to provide protection for those in passenger seats. Okay, so that means use seat belts and things like that. Okay, but that's sort of an expectation. Should, right? It doesn't have to be true. The author of the argument is not making any assumption like that. In fact, he doesn't even have automobile experts in the argument, right? So this doesn't have to be true. Again, you can do the negation test. Doesn't matter, because should would become should not. It would essentially have the same influence on the argument. That influence is zero actually. It doesn't change the argument anyway. So this is out. Answer choice E. Automobile passengers sometimes play. Okay, beware of this sometimes, because again, like rarely, we don't know how many times and all. So always a question mark when it comes to a quantifier, like sometimes, rarely, right? Just note this. I don't know if that is useful, not useful, but just make a habit of sort of spotting these words. Automobile passengers sometimes play a contributing role in causing auto accidents. Okay, if that is the case, right, then can we call them innocent? Okay, can we call them innocent? We can't, right? So this is not consistent with the passage. The assumption has to be in the same direction as the argument, right? This is sort of going in the opposite direction. Okay, the argument calls passengers innocent. Here they are saying passengers are contributing to the accident. Yeah, there is a question of what this means sometimes, but prima facie this goes against. Okay, let's negate it. Again, let's rely on the foolproof method. Let's negate it. Automobile passengers, never. Sometimes it becomes never, right? Automobile passengers never play a contributing role. In that case, would that break down the argument? It will not break down the argument, right? It is sort of will go with the argument in that case rather, right? Automobile passengers never play a contributing role basically means passengers are always innocent. So the negation of this would go in line with the direction. We want the negation to go opposite of the conclusion or the argument, right? So this does the opposite thing. So this is out. The best answer choice that we have is A.